Welcome back. Next up, Maggie Lee from Verra will be speaking on corporate plastic stewardship. Verra is an NGO and a global leader helping to tackle the world's most intractable environmental and social challenges by developing and managing standards that help the private sector, countries, and civil society achieve ambitious sustainable development and climate action goals. Maggie Lee is currently lead plastic program for Verra and Asia Pacific regional lead for global seafood traceability for WWF. Over to you, Maggie.
So much for the kind introductions. Hi, everyone. My name is Maggie Lee, and I'm here representing Verra today. So you may have heard of many NGOs that are very international, and Verra is also now an international NGO, but it is actually on the smaller scale. And we have built our reputation on various standards. And so it is a standards body that's based in Washington, D.C. And I myself come from the Asia continent, and I'm now in the region of Southeast Asia, and I have been for the past few years, working on various environmental approaches, including the plastic approach or plastic waste reduction approach for corporations. My background, as you may already know, is actually from the private sector and manufacturing. And so we're hoping that this presentation, the plastic waste reduction standard by Verra, would be attractive to all our friends from the manufacturing and also from the commercial sector who want to actually do something about their plastic waste. So without further ado, let me just quickly get started. I'll also tell you a little bit more about Verra and why do we need to actually work on plastics. And also what I'm offering as the main program today is our introductions for two things: the guidelines for corporate plastic stewardship, which is a RRR initiative piece of guideline, and also the plastic waste reduction standard from Verra. So very quickly, Verra is, as I mentioned, an NGO. It was founded in 2007, and we're based in Washington, D.C. of the U.S. Most of my colleagues are there, and I'm now the first person who's based in Southeast Asia. I'm based in Bangkok, Thailand. So Verra has quite a few different standards, and the most famous one would definitely be the verified carbon standard. And as the name suggests, it is actually targeting our carbon emissions and greenhouse gas emissions. So now Verra has a very new standard that's called the Plastic Waste Reduction Standard that was launched in February of this year. And we're really looking forward to get your feedback and also to understand how it may help some of the businesses and also help the different plastic collection and recycling projects here in Southeast Asia and especially Malaysia. So a little bit about the RRR initiative. As you may see, there are quite a lot of logos here that you can recognize. Verra is also a part of it as the secretariat, along with BV Rio, which is an NGO from Brazil. So the RRR initiative, as the name suggests, it's also not very intuitive because we're very used to thinking about reduce, reuse, and recycle, whereas the RRR initiative uses recover as the middle R. We do believe that this this cross-sectoral collaboration, a very international one, could actually put together solutions for our plastic waste problem. And so as you can see in the steering committee, we do have quite a lot of large brand names that are working on this with us. I won't go through that in detail. You're free to actually check out our website with the RRR initiative. So the RRR initiative definitely focuses on plastic. And why plastic in general, right? As we know, the plastic waste problem has been plaguing this entire planet for quite a number of years. And only for the past few years did it come to public knowledge that the problem has already aggravated to this point. So we know that there are about 40% of all plastic packaging that would actually leak into the environment eventually. That is a very staggering percentage, and we're bound to change that. We have to. So, and we know that only 15% of global plastic packaging is actually being recycled at this point. And recycling has actually begun much earlier in many parts of the world compared with Southeast Asia, where we're living right now. So this is actually a very shocking bit of detail that actually came into light in the past few years. And that's also why there's quite a lot of investments rushing in to actually help the problem of plastic waste. And we know that waste sometimes is actually recovered by waste pickers who are not actually given a fair wage, or they're not provided with safe conditions to work. Especially now with COVID-19, we know that there are quite a lot of risks and hazards that are posed for waste pickers, especially here in Southeast Asia, where a large part of municipal solid waste is actually being handled by waste pickers. So this is definitely some of the reasons why we actually started working on what you see right now on the screen, which is the guidelines for corporate plastic stewardship. It is, as I mentioned, one of the works by the Triple R initiative. It is not owned by Verra, although Verra did take part in actually the making of it. But it is actually the work and the hard work, fruit of work by quite a few organizations, as you've seen in the past few slides. So it is a framework for corporate action in terms of plastic stewardship. You may have heard of the term plastic footprint. It is almost like your carbon footprint, but more about how you produce and consume plastic as a company. You can also have a plastic footprint as a person as well. So the guidelines for corporate plastic stewardship, in short, is actually a good way to manage a company's plastic footprint. We do also want to actually encourage the companies that are using this guideline to put together commitments that are tangible and that are verifiable. So we know that there are quite a lot of different commitments that companies want to have when it comes to plastics. But we do want to have a very solid framework so that these commitments can be traced back to how it came to be, and also some methodologies and also some actions that should be taken by this company before these commitments are declared, and also before they're reached, as in they're actually being fulfilled by the companies. And so very quickly, I will actually take you through the essence of what the guidelines are. We do want to create the concept of a total footprint, which includes the plastic consumption, which is used by the company deliberately. So these are probably the packaging or the intermediate packaging that is not in the final product, but are being consumed throughout the plastic, throughout the assembly line, which is part of the plastic value chain. And also leakage. We know that no waste management system is 100%. Nothing is perfect at this point. We know that there's quite a lot of leakage of plastics, and this is also where the problem begins. So we know that there's these two combined: plastic use that is deliberate and actually intended, and also leakage, which is unintended, and it could actually happen at any point within the plastic value chain. These two would actually be the two parts that make up the total footprint of any company that's producing any type of plastics. And then we also want to actually highlight the next part that we suggest companies to do is actually the mitigation activities. We know that there's quite a lot of efforts now ongoing, and we really commend the companies that are already doing some of these activities. I will go into detail about what types of activities companies can actually participate in order to mitigate their plastic footprint. Some of that may be within their own value chain. Some of it may be outside of their value chain, so that they could manage their post-consumer plastic as well. And of course, there's also a very hot topic that we definitely stand by is extended producer responsibility schemes. Some may call it the producer responsibility scheme as well, for different regions. And we know that they're applying to companies in different ways, depending on the geography. We're definitely also counting that as some of the mitigation activities that are highly successful. And at the end, we do think that the total footprint plus the mitigation activities would equal the leadership claims. There are quite a few leadership claims you see here. The three of them that are actually being supported by the guidelines would be the net zero plastic leakage, net 100% recycled at end of life. This is a very long one, but we do actually have every word is very justified in this one. And also, of course, at the very end, almost at one of the highest goals that we can actually have, it's the commitment of net circular plastic. And so you do see that the word net is part of every single claim. And I will also mention how this is the case later on in detail. So as I mentioned, mitigation activities, they come in all shapes and sizes, and they actually have, they're drastically different depending on which type of manufacturer or retailer or distributor you are. So there are companies that actually use a lot of packaging for their products, whereas some of the companies are actually using some of the packaging that are being passed on from their suppliers to them, and they don't add on as much plastics. And so depending on the type of the company, we do realize that there are different ways to actually ensure that you have the right mitigation activities for your plastic value chain. And so there are quite a lot of suggested ones here. And as you see in this inverted pyramid, it makes more sense for us to actually start with the ones that are more common and more effective, and down to the ones that are further away from the control of our plastic value chain. And so first one, we do have redesign for reduction, reuse, and recycling. So a good example could be that when we're staying at hotels and we stay for multiple nights, sometimes the toothpaste runs out and we need a new tube of toothpaste. And so if we run out of toothpaste, we usually would ask for a new dental set because it's usually packaged with the toothbrush. And so this is actually where design could come in to save the day, is that we know that we don't need a new toothbrush just yet, but we do need a new tube of toothpaste. So this is an excellent example of how, if we redesign how the dental kit is bundled, or maybe not bundled at all, we can actually have a lower consumption of plastics that is totally preventable. So we're hoping that redesign could be an integral part of the thinking with regards to mitigation activities and in this hierarchy as well. The second part is actually to increase the recycled content of products. This goes without saying is one of the most effective ones, because we actually keep circularity by putting in more recycled content to our products. We do know that it is somewhat a difficult task, especially with food contact materials. So food manufacturers have reported to many NGOs that they have a problem with addressing how to actually put in more recycled content. And we do understand that there are many different products that also are able to do this. So it may actually be very different depending on the type of product that these manufacturers produce. And also increasing collection and recycling. This is getting smaller and smaller because we understand that it's not as widely done in the sector, in the manufacturing sectors just yet. And at the very bottom, we know that collection is also very difficult to actually have as a standalone action. So there are quite a lot of reasons why the RRR initiative also focused on these two parts. We know that we do want to increase collection and recycling activities. As I mentioned before, the numbers are just not satisfactory at this point. We do want to boost this in ways that we increase investment into these projects. We do want to encourage companies and manufacturers to increase their investments in these areas as well, even though previously this may be seen as something that only waste management companies are required to do. And then also, we do want direct company involvement in the increase of collection of waste plastics as well. So the guidelines is actually available for everybody, and it's actually available in public domain. So you can access these guidelines by going to RRR Initiative's website. And it's been launched for about 3-4 months at this point. So please feel free to check the guidelines out and adopt the guidelines whenever possible. And we're definitely looking forward to hearing from you about how you feel of the guidelines. The contacts for the guidelines are actually not Verra. For more information, please contact South Pole and Qantas. Hopefully these links will be shared with you after the webinar. So now going back to what Verra does is actually the plastic waste reduction standard. Sometimes we could just call it plastic standard for short. So thinking back to the mitigation hierarchy described in the guidelines, the plastic standard facilitates beyond value chain investments in plastic waste collection and recycling activities. The objective of the plastic standard is to actually support and scale up activities that increase plastic waste recycling and or collection of which from the environment. The intended benefits of the standard include all these that you see here, which include robust assessment of project impact, whether it's undertaken within or outside the company's value chain. and also support for corporate efforts to report plastic waste reduction contributions in a credible and transparent way. This is the two words that I've emphasized here are definitely the key. We know that many companies are interested in collection and contributing to efforts that are already ongoing. But we do want to find a way that is definitely credible and transparent so that we can always trace back and we can always announce that there are efforts ongoing in which part of the world and through which channels and methods. We do also want to have increased investments in high impact projects that are resulting in the increased availability of recycled plastic feedstocks in some of the key production regions. And at the very end, we do think that it will help address and reduce the social risk and has the possibility to improve livelihoods through recycled material supply chains. So we did mention that waste pickers are very much at risk when there are no safeguarding guidelines for their work in the plastic waste collection activities. So we are hoping that our new plastic standard would address all of these. And we're now actually already at the steps when we are putting together an advisory group to ensure that we have a continuous improvement towards these different areas. This is a simple diagram to address how material and also credits would flow. Credits, just like carbon credits, they're no different, and they're actually away from the value chain of the plastic producers themselves in this plastic standard. And so many companies and many different plastic collection projects have already gone through some of the same actions. It is just that we now have put together a credit system that is actually centralized and also transparent for these different actors and stakeholders to access. And so when on the left here, you see this, there's waste collection from the environment, which actually is going to be recycled whenever possible at the lower yellow arc. And of course, they have to be sorted by type first. And once it is recycled, they actually generate both recycling and collection credits. They're called waste recycling and waste collection credits. Whereas if we actually collect other types of plastic waste from the environment that is no longer recyclable, that actually is going to go for the top arc, where there's non-recyclable plastic that is not being accepted by any recycling facilities. We will try to actually put them away from the environment, but also dispose of these plastics in a manageable and in a proper fashion. And these ones would actually generate only waste collection credits. Ultimately, any type of credits generated would actually have remuneration that goes back to the waste collection efforts. This is also going down to all the waste pickers and the workers that are participating in these activities. So using the waste plastic standard, projects can account for the plastic waste they collect or recycle in line with social and environmental safeguards. If that collected and recycled waste is additional, meaning that it's actually not already in existence, meaning that this project creates the additional waste collected or recycled compared with the status quo before, the project can generate plastic credits. There are two types of credits in this program, as we mentioned in the previous diagram. It is the waste collection credits and the waste recycling credits to indicate the outcomes for which credits are issued. Those credits can then be used by corporations to meet their net zero plastic leakage or net circular plastic claims. I'm going to explain to you what activities are covered by the standard and how these two types of credits are generated, and within a mitigation framework, how these credits can be used by companies to make certain claims. This will be now the detail of what I covered in the earlier diagram. So materials such as any product or packaging made from the 7 types or 7 categories of plastic composite materials that is now in nature, including in oceans or sometimes in makeshift dumps or landfills, can be collected using any of these activities, such as waste collection from the environment or improved curbside collection. Materials is diverted from or taken out of nature through this type of collection activity. And that activity can be demonstrated to be additional to the baseline scenario. It can be accounted for and used to generate waste collection credits. And we categorize recycling activities as those that either result in plastic waste being delivered to a recycling facility, or an activity by a recycling facility itself, such as investment in technologies for hard to recycled materials, or development of a new recycling technology. So if any of these activities result in more waste recycled than what would have occurred in the baseline scenario, it can be accounted for to generate waste recycling credits. So we're seeing companies commit not only to increasing the amount of recycled plastic that they use and are switching to alternative materials for, but to going beyond their own actions to achieve waste collection and circular plastic-related commitments. For example, a company could participate in an extended producer responsibility, or an EPR scheme, and do its best as designing products that are generating little waste. However, there will always be some leakage of plastics to the environment. And we know that that is just a very harsh fact that we have to deal with because no system is actually perfect. So if a company purchases waste collection credits to mitigate the total plastic in the environment from that company itself, then it could make a claim of allowing net zero plastic to nature, or net zero plastic leakage. This would be relevant for a company that has a commitment, for example. So they could actually also say they recover more than they put out. And now we've already seen one of the first few global brands that are using the Verra plastic standard to say that they've now achieved more recovery of plastics than they put out. And we know that nobody intends to actually put out plastics into nature, but as we now know that leakage is inevitable, and we now know that there are ways to ensure that we cover that component, that amount of plastic that we leak into nature. So similarly, a company could do all it could to redesign or design products and use innovative reuse systems to get plastic out of its products. But at least in the short term, plastic will be with us. So in order to achieve net 100% recycled at end of life, it should achieve net zero plastic leakage. Then it should retire the plastic collection credits equivalent to the number of waste collection credits used to achieve their net zero plastic leakage claim to ensure that the amount of plastic is collected. And finally, it should compensate for any plastic collected but not recycled, meaning that the plastic that is converted to energy or ending up in a landfill is also accounted for by retiring an equivalent amount of waste recycling credits. We know that this is actually a very complex system that was put together not just by Verra themselves, but also with quite a lot of different stakeholders from across sectors. It will take some time for you to actually familiarize with these types of rules per the standard, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have meanwhile. So some of the quality assurance principles that are associated with the plastic standard is this entire support system, which constitutes of 7 quality assurance principles. Waste plastic collected or recycled under the plastic program and issued as plastic credits must be real, means that the waste that was actually collected or recycled must actually be auditable and measurable. And being measurable and additional, it actually is a conservative estimate using an improved accounting methodology, and it's independently audited by a third party and uniquely numbered and transparently listed on the Verra registry. Now, that is definitely a very big concept to understand, but ultimately we are creating a system that is auditable, that is actually traceable back to actually which projects are receiving the investments, where they're at, and what types of activities are done by these projects. So ultimately, we're trying to create this system of responsibility, and we're trying to find out who bears the responsibility of taking back these types of plastics as well. So we now, as I mentioned, Verra is putting together their first advisory group for now this launched standard. We've had different types of advisors and consultants in the past providing us with their valuable opinion in the past. So we're now looking forward to make sure that there's continuous improvement using these different principles. And I have highlighted additional here because that's definitely something that is very valuable and very important to this standard. We know that it is also one of the criteria set upon by WWF as something that they have mentioned in their plastic neutrality and plastic credits position statement. We're making sure that the Verra standard, the Verra plastic standard, is going to keep this additionality concept as one of its major and always and forever principles. So I will stop here and also provide you with this last big picture as to what this plastic program is really consisting of. As I mentioned earlier, there is already the Triple R initiative. They are advocating for the stewardship of plastic value chains by the corporations. And so within their plastic value chain and also outside of their plastic value chain, they could do quite a lot of things to ensure that they minimize the dependency on producing with virgin plastics by replacing the plastic content with recycled content, and also preventing leakage into the environment overall. So these central components are very key to how this Verra plastic standard will work. We have accounting methodologies that are carefully laid out and in detail in the plastic standard that's available on our website and available for public use. And also the independent auditing component. This will be done by third-party auditors who will examine the different plastic collection and recycling projects to ensure that they are what they claim to be. And ultimately, we also have a registry system that is internal to Verra, and we are making sure that this is a central registration system that the credits will go through, and that the different projects that are listed and eventually registered will be available for public consultation on. So the registry system is actually developed internally by Verra and also external partners. And we're making sure that the credits that are being discussed and also being transacted will go through this registry. And so that is about it for my time. And I'm hoping that we have a good plastic standard for different corporations to use. And we're really hoping that this will put more investments into Malaysia's and also Southeast Asia's and also the entire globe's plastic waste collection and recycling activities. We do hope that these claims that I've discussed, especially the net circular plastic claim, could be realized by different brands in the future. Thank you very much for listening.
All right. Thank you so much, Maggie, for your sharing. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Maggie. Yes, so we got a number of questions in the Q&A box. So I'd just like to ask you, you shared a lot about the plastic guidelines and also the Verra plastic standards as well. And then in the earlier session, WWF has also shared their stand on and their guidelines on the EPR. So one of the questions asked was, what could be the quickest path or the most efficient path towards implementation for sustainability? Because it seems that although some might have longer term impact, adoption might take a bit longer. What do you think should be the focus?
Is that a very general question about sustainability overall?
Yes.
I see. So in my opinion, after dealing with so many different corporations in my past roles, I think it's top-down buy-in. So of course, your C-suite members that are making the executive decisions need to understand that besides making profits, companies still do need to actually earn the hearts of the consumers. And now that is actually really through doing the right thing. It's not just pertaining to the environment, but also to many other factors that constitute sustainability, such as what I mentioned in the presentation earlier, workers' welfare. So waste pickers' welfare is also part of that too. So if we do have careful and conscientious considerations of all the different factors that make up sustainability, you earn the right to profit. So that's also what I like to say a lot. And corporations that are negligent in these areas will hopefully eventually see that they're being laggards in this area, and hopefully they will catch up. So definitely lead the pack by having top-down decisions on putting sustainability as a priority.
Yes, I agree with that. And you also mentioned in terms of the corporate responsibility as well. Like you have to have this top-down view on that. What do you think of, especially for the SMEs, the smaller businesses? What kind of incentive could there be in order to incentivize them towards transforming towards a more circular business model, maybe also implementing some of the guidelines that Verra has as well? Would it be in the form of like a new green tax or anything?
Yeah, so the Verra system that I mentioned earlier, the Verra plastic standard, is a voluntary standard. So there's really no government that is executing it as part of any regulation. So we know that businesses that are keen on doing this as pioneers or as leaders in sustainability will tend to have interest in such systems. And we are hoping that this will not be the last, and we hope that we will continue to actually work on, for example, maybe different materials or different parts, not just in recycling and collection, but how about reduction? So we are actually looking at being more holistic and putting together systems that standardize these activities that are taken by companies. So we are looking to see how this market goes. But at this moment, we think that most attention is needed with recycling and collection. We know that the recycling system has been ongoing in many parts of the world for so many years, but why has it failed? Like, why is recycling no longer the legend that we used to believe in? And so hopefully once we actually get to this one going and we understand how credits can actually bring merits to these types of systems that once were the promise, they were once the solution, but now they have actually failed because of multiple reasons in economics and also in the current environmental status, and also with the way companies are subjecting themselves to these voluntary standards. We hope that we can actually find out how to improve the credit systems so that they would be more accessible and more applicable to most companies.
Okay. I think following up on that, there's also a question that asks, like, in which country has this model worked? Why not focus to introduce a container deposit scheme or deposit return scheme, which is a proven model around the world to increase recycling rates?
Great question. Definitely deposit return schemes and also EPRs were also ones what I worked on with our other speakers from WWF, Yvonne and also Jaslyn. But Verra is actually highly focused on the standards field or sector. So we're trying to actually merge our standards so that we can find out what to do in terms of integrating into parts of Southeast Asia, for example. So with different parties from Southeast Asia, I can probably name the countries, with Malaysia and Indonesia mostly. And I saw a question from Crispian, hi Crispian, about the Philippines. And we are definitely trying to get in touch as well to see how can credits play a role in supporting EPR and also deposit return schemes. In Hong Kong, they are also having public consultation. I've also submitted my opinion on that. Credits is just another way to accomplish what EPR is trying to do. And so that's very clearly written in the WWF position statement that was published in January of this year. There's a very specific criteria that's listed out. And so we are definitely making sure that our plastic standard will follow the criteria listed out by WWF, and to make sure that ultimately we can have something that actually is an interim of what EPR would look like in the future. It took Germany at least 2 decades to figure out their EPR system to make sure that it has all the right components to be a thriving and continuous approach. So I'm sure that we will need a few more years for Southeast Asia and also Malaysia to understand what EPR system would work the best. And hopefully in that gap, we're not just being stale and idle. We actually can have plastic credits as something that leaders can choose to adopt.
Okay. Yes. And then for one final question, is certification something Verra might be providing to companies that come on board the Corporate Plastic Stewardship guidelines, something similar to the MSC for fisheries as well?
Yeah, great question as well. So as you know, MSC is a standard that is ISEAL level, and ISEAL is one of, if not the highest standards of standards. That's what they're known as. So Verra standards are definitely living up to that level, but we're not giving out certificates per se. So it's up to the companies that hire the auditors to audit their accounting methods for them to actually see whether or not they're doing what the guidelines and also the Verra plastic standard dictates. So the Verra plastic standard really dictates the projects that are collecting and recycling plastics for this time. There's nothing else that we're providing certificates for. We're making sure that these projects that are collecting and recycling plastic waste are being audited, and then they're being listed and registered in the Verra registry, as I mentioned earlier. So we're not giving out certificates to companies, but there are companies that have been using the Verra plastic standards to certify themselves. And so they're just making these claims about how they're using the Verra standards to do their plastic accounting, and that they are able to declare that they are net circular, for example. That is one of the claims that I've discussed earlier. And there was just one company that actually did that about a week ago. So we're interested to see how this progresses. But at this time, we're not directly talking with, we're not directly certifying any of the companies that are producing plastic.
Okay. Great. Yeah, thanks for sharing. We're looking forward, to future updates as well from Verra. So that wraps up the Q&A session from Maggie. Thank you so much for your sharing and also for answering the questions. For those that we didn't manage to answer your questions here, I think Maggie would be able to also reply you in the chat as well. Yeah, so with that, we'll be going on to a short break before moving on to the next session. And also we'll share Verra's social medias as well, so you can follow and keep up with the updates from Verra. Thank you.
Thank you.